So here we go again with another garden update. It's the 30th of July 2019. Very hot and muggy day. The flowers are finally starting to bloom. These are the ones that I planted from seeds in April. And it takes till like the end of July before they start flowering. And then they flower like crazy. Of course, the bees love them. They get intoxicated, covered with all sorts of pollen from, excuse me, the various colored flowers. You know, last week, I believe it was last week, NASA reported that a asteroid just zipped past the Earth, totally undetected. Obviously, we're still here, so it missed us, but it just goes to show how fragile our existence is. You know, as we travel through space. I think it was like McKenna said, no, it wasn't McKenna, it was, what the hell was it? Watts, Alan Watts, said, we're already out in space, way out in space, when he was referring to space travel. That like people don't really consider the fact that the Earth is caught in, you know, the clutches of our sun, our star, which is just zooming through space. And we're moving so fast at speeds that are just, you know, incomprehensible. And so we're traveling. We're basically on a spaceship. But anyway, it's like a shooting gallery. And as we zip through the galaxy and the universe, there's all sorts of things that are also being caught by our star, or that we're passing through areas where those things are just passing through themselves. And over what they call deep time, the odds are that these things will collide. Like Velikovsky, worlds in collision. When you consider this possibility of being wiped out in an instant by an asteroid or a solar flare, you know, or anything, any sort of thing that occurs over these long periods of time, it really makes the pettiness of politics and everything else that people seem to be obsessed with these days seem so insignificant. I mean, it's like this bee, you know, at any given time, you know, it could be eaten by some sort of bird, or a human can kill it, or with the same probable odds of the Earth being hit with an asteroid, a hailstorm can come and just a piece of hail could just hit target right on it, and just, I mean, it's not a pleasant thought, but these are the realities of life. But in many ways, like that bee has no concept whatsoever of the possibility that its life can be ended at any given time. We put that out of our minds as well. We don't like to think about, that sort of thing. But for me, I think it's important to put your life in perspective because it gives you a greater appreciation of the things you have. It's like when someone has an illness and recovers, or they have an illness that's terminal. They tend to appreciate the little things, the moments in a day, much more than, where the average person just takes for granted that it's nice weather, the sunset, anything of that sort. It's this week I used to have, if you've watched my earlier videos, there was a rabbit, Mr. Bunny, and a chipmunk I was feeding in my garden. And over the past week, I've had some cats hanging around. And I think I'm hoping they just chased the bunny away. I'd seen the bunny several blocks down from where I live, and another cat like looking at it through a field, and I was pretty sure it was the same bunny that hung out in my yard. But I don't think he or she is going to be coming back. And I usually leave peanuts out for the chipmunk, and I haven't seen them taken. But for a while there was this thing where several dozen birds, a turtle dove, the chipmunk, and the bunny would all be hanging out around the feeder, spending hours and hours a day together. Friendship, companionship, It was their little community. And I was a part of that community. And so I kind of almost feel a sense of loss this week, seeing that end. I guess it's almost like whenever you're in a situation, it's like someone goes to a, summer camp and meets people, or when I was younger, I used to do summer jobs at the shore, and you'd spend a couple months with people, and you'd get closely bonded, good friendships. But the people were from all different parts of the country, and they would go back to their place, and it would be like, hey, I'll see you never, type of thing. So again, it's almost comes back to that point of appreciate the time you have with people, the time and the experiences of your life, because it's all fleeting. And when I see people get so bent out of shape over such petty things like politics or things that have to do with material things or issues that really are beyond the scope of them doing anything to change, it just I don't know, gives me a bad feeling. I originally made the mistake of shooting this with a smartphone. And while the smartphone takes a good picture, it was unfortunately in the vertical position. I just wasn't thinking. So I cropped this to fit the screen, and that's why if you're looking at this on a somewhat larger viewing monitor, it'll probably be a little tad modeled. But I guess on a smartphone, if you're looking at it, it probably looks fine. So the garden is growing pretty well. I got rid of my lettuce uh, just this past week. I pulled the last couple plants out. I just planted some new seeds today so that I might have some lettuce right before the end of the growing season into the fall. I put in a few radishes too, just for the heck of it. My main focus and hope right now is to get the tomato plants producing, and hopefully I still have enough time to get peppers. I've gotten a few jalapeno peppers so far, but not as many, not a lot. And I've got some plants, and I think we'll get a view of them here. But excuse me, I can't talk today. I was outside putting some mulch in the neighbor's yard. I mow the neighbor's lawn. It's an elderly woman, and but her yard is like an obstacle course. She has various. She's got those little solar lights you stick in the ground, and various little things. So mowing the lawn is not like it's it's just a pain. So I was trying to mulch around all the obstacles so that grass slash weeds won't grow there, and make my life a little bit easier. I'm one of these people that doesn't believe in the lawn. I think the lawn is ridiculous. I mean, I guess I could understand how some sort of, in the 50s or the 60s, when the average working person family was able to get a house in a neighborhood, and they, had a yard, or they had a front, an area with a front lawn that made them feel, some like, they had their little miniature castle or whatever, I don't know. But to me, it's just the most ridiculous thing in the world. It's this manicured golf course in front of somebody's house or in their backyard. And then these people that buy these tractor type lawnmowers, sit down lawnmowers, cost thousands of dollars for this, to keep this thing looking, cut. It's just so, I don't know. It's funny in one way, but to me it's pathetic. I mean, I still have some grass in my backyard, but that's the reason I planted those apple trees. I'm hoping that in the coming years, those trees will fill the rest of that area that's a lawn, and I will have no lawn whatsoever. And I look forward to that day. I'll also be using a push mower for what little lawn I have. The whole concept of having to have these power mowers to mow this stuff is just so ridiculous and cumbersome, and it's crazy. Especially when you could be growing food. Those are some cucumbers on the lower right of the screen. I don't know if they'll make their way up that trellis and I'll get them this year or not. I just banged the table with my knee. These are what's left of my determinate tomatoes. I'm hoping I've got about a dozen or more left on here. At other parts of my yard, I have some indeterminates. They're mostly the yellow tomatoes, small ones, like the cherry-sized tomatoes. I'm looking forward to getting a decent yield of those. Probably not for couple more weeks. Even though I planted fairly early this year and the plants were fairly healthy, we had the weather was crazy. It was cold and rainy. It was an awful lot of rain, and then it was very hot. Like today was ridiculous. It was 80 some degrees and very humid outside. And what happens is, tomatoes have like a Goldilocks zone of when they really, like to produce. And if it's too hot or too cold, you just don't not get good production. There's one on the left-hand side that's partially turning red, is aroma tomato. I only got a few of those out of that plant. That was a disappointment this year. Another disappointment with the tomatoes. It's funny, everybody grows tomatoes. I have this garden, and I have incredible things growing that most people probably would never grow in their backyard. And yet, the most common thing uh, as a tomato, I just am not having a good year with. For some reason, I still have more kale than you could imagine, and I've seen other people who are, professionals, so to speak, having already, their kale's gone. Same with my parsley. I still have a hell of a lot of parsley. But a couple zucchinis, they're not out of control. I had some zucchini this morning. It was my breakfast, some zucchini with chopped red bell peppers, onions, aroma tomato, some olive oil, a bunch of chopped up sage, parsley, oregano, kale, and it was pretty tasty. Put in a little flax meal, thickened it up, made it like a sauce, and it was great. I sound run down. Over the past week, I've been cleaning a building I used to live and have an office in that was being leased. It was a lease purchase to someone else who trashed the place. And I've been trying to get the place cleaned out. This guy, a crazy story, but since these are just rants for myself, I don't know if anybody listens. This guy never took out the trash. And he even had a couple of cats. In other words, there was trash. He was there for about 8 years in this building. And all I've gotten the front door and the back door areas, like I've started to like clear those areas to get in. But I mean, there literally is trash piled from the floor to the ceiling. Many areas are impassable. It's you need to have respirator masks and shoe covering. I've put sprayed disinfectants and fogged the place to kill the spiders and moths. And, I mean the stench. It's just it was unbelievable. Next week I've got another day of all I'm trying to do is just clear the hallways, the entranceways, so that someone can navigate through there, and we're just going to try to sell the building to somebody and say, look, you're going to have to gut it. but you can have it for this bargain basement price. Plus the guy, the reason is, and on top of it, the guy never paid, and he got so far behind. And crazy story. So I was kind of burned out about that. But I don't know. I may do a video on that, but that just might be too much to do. Because working there, it's like you just want to get in and get out. It's like really not the type of place that you want to take the time to set up tripods and cameras and all that kind of stuff. But we'll see. Maybe I will shoot some video. I don't know if you can notice, but in the very center there, the green, darker green leaves, I put in a pepper plant there as well. These were pepper plants I had in my greenhouse, but the greenhouse had gotten ridiculously too hot. And so I figured I'd put the pepper plant there, and once these tomatoes turn red, and if they don't turn red within the next week or so, I'm just going to yank all those plants out of this space, because there's not even any leaves on them left, which is probably why there's probably not enough energy in them to look at this bee or insect. Yeah, when you have the slow motion thing on, you capture all these little things that you just normally you don't even see in front of you. That's that spearmint on the lower left-hand side. But even though the fact that I didn't get a hell of a lot of tomatoes, it's just as well, because like I said, I have probably, I don't know, 15 or 20, something like that, on my counter right now. Half of them are almost finished ripening, and maybe I've got a half dozen green ones still. So for one person, I still have plenty. That's the whole thing, and I've given away a couple away to some people. So I was able to make a salsa last week. Look at those two things. They just like ran into each other. You see that? I made a salsa completely from the garden last week using my cilantro, a couple jalapeno peppers, chopped up a couple of tomatoes. Everything. I mean, it was tremendous. I mean, I always add a little olive oil and some things like that, but I mean, pretty much the bulk, of the salsa itself was produced, mainly out of what I grew, and it was very, very tasty, very good salsa. That's one of the fun things about growing your own stuff. So I become bored with, I've been bored with politics and the media and most of the things that people seem to be getting fired up about or dealing with obsessively. And, I just don't even know how they do it anymore. Like, day in, day out, it's the same thing, or something new, but it's not new. It's the same old thing. These arguments back and forth, name calling, and it's all posturing. It's all political, vote for me. But in reality, nothing changes in the grand scheme of things. And so it's very boring. It just becomes boring and idiotic and stupidity. This crop, the way so in order to get the vertical screen landscaped, you have to crop it. And so now we're looking at a beautiful crop of walkway. This is that's the very center of like my original garden was just this spot, and then it expanded into taking up almost a third to a half of my yard, which is nice. Coming up over on this side, I still have some Swiss chard growing, but mainly now I've got, apart from a small tomato plant that's in here somewhere, or I may have pulled it out, these are pepper plants. And again, they're just not, for this time of year, these pepper plants should be bushy and bigger. But instead, they're small. So I'm going to, actually, I will, considering I had a jalapeno I pulled fresh from the garden this morning, and I know I have like at least 2 or 3 that can be picked. These these plants will be plenty for me to have peppers and to be able to share a few peppers over the course of August. By the end of August, I'll probably have extra peppers. I also accidentally was weeding where I was growing my potatoes, and there was a potato close to the surface, so it looks like I'll have a yield this year of a couple dozen, hopefully a couple dozen. But even if I just get a dozen potatoes, that's fine too. I mean, use one potato in a soup, maybe 1 or 2 potatoes, and to make a little potato salad. Um, they go a long way. These are just various peppers from bell peppers to jalapeno peppers to some sort of red pepper. And again, we'll just have to see what happens. I think early on in the season, the ants were eating them. I've noticed that ants go after pepper plants. But I think the rain somehow just flooded the ants. So we had such torrential rains that I think the ants just probably just eventually drowned out the colony there that was underneath this part of the bed. Don't know. I hope they don't come back. There's some sort of insect navigating its way underneath those leaves heading towards the upper right hand screen. There it goes. There's one of my gloves. Gotta wear gloves in the garden. Here's where I planted. I hope those are morning insects. This was shot in the morning. These things last for a couple hours and they die. So I put the rest of my pepper plants over here. And they've all taken well as far as in the soil and the plant to be planted. But again, it's going to be several weeks. Probably won't be till the end of August till I get anything out of them. But I think I will. There's a good thing about that. And that looks like that's about all it is. I thought I had shot more, but I didn't. But actually, I can add on. Actually, I did shoot a little bit more, and I'll be able to add just a very short clip on the end, I think, to show you the rest of my garden. This is some more Swiss chard over here near the parsley. This was my square garden patch, which really is incredible. And there's the kale there. Yeah, sorry for that false ending. I still am going to add on one more clip to this. I'll do that right now. Actually, the clip I thought I had wasn't the clip I had. So this is just me realizing earlier on that the camera was in the vertical mode. So this is actually with the landscape view. It's kind of almost the same scene in slow-mo. But don't worry, it's only a couple of minutes. Just to finish off the babble about this and circle back to what I started out saying, how we just take things for granted. And at any given time, you know, where our life is so fragile, our planetary existence is so fragile, friendships, family, everything we know, you know, it's just, you know, it's here today, gone tomorrow. And if more of us would focus on, and I know I'm consciously trying to do that, just focus on the here and now and appreciate, you know, people, nature, you know, what you have, your health, and all those things. It's really, it's just, to me, it's the only way to go through life. Because when it's gone, it's gone. By the end of the summer, and you'll see this flowering plant. You can see buds if you look towards the right. You can see 3 or 4 buds. This thing will be filled with these, like, this is some kind of mutated marigold plant or something. It grows to be like 3 to 4 feet tall, and that's when it starts flowering. And they're almost the size of like carnations, and the colors are it's mostly on this particular. I have a number of these. I planted these all from seeds. These are my own personal heirloom seeds. My cat just crossed. But they'll be orange and yellows primarily. I'll be curious to see if I get anything. I think I might have had a white, something white. The cat is seeing me talking to a computer and is wondering why. Talking cat. I'll have to have the cat on a video. So we're going into grand solar minimum, and I think the next time I do a video, I'm going to be talking about that. It's one of those other things that people just are simply not aware of. We may be dealing with crop shortages, crazy, really affecting the growing patterns, and just a lot of snow, a lot of cooling. The opposite of, you know, what the global warming people were saying 10, 20 years ago. It's actually, we're heading into perhaps a 400-year cycle of serious cooling on the overall on the planet. It has to do with the magnetic field, the solar cycles, and which affect the jet stream, causing it to be like a roller coaster. And that's why it's hot, extremely hot one day, and then, you know, then you get this polar, they call it a polar vortex, but it's just a jet stream going crazy. Anyway, stay tuned for that. Visit my website and buy a shirt. I'll talk to you next time. rockflux.com